So what we are doing right now is that we have two populations and we are comparing their properties, their average, some average characteristic. So for example, things like which one is more productive, which one on average, which one is more productive, or on average, which method is more effective, comparing the two methods, those kinds of questions. On average, which one is better? But we are answering them using some sampling. We do not have access to the full population. So we take some samples and try to answer questions about some comparison between two populations. And we had done many examples last time, and we had discussed the method, how to put confidence interval. So again, since it's a statistical method, we will only be putting some confidence interval given some desired probability that the difference between these two populations, we will always be interested in the difference between between two populations. And we give a confidence interval for the difference between, say again? Yeah, but he can't do anything. So there is no IT person available. So, but the person who showed up wasn't an IT person. He had no idea. But if you had asked them, he hasn't shown up yet. So do you have a phone? So right now what you will have to do is see it on the phone. So we have two populations and we are comparing them in a statistical way. We put some confidence intervals for the difference between two normal populations when your samples are correlated. So I'm just, can you give me 1 minute? So what we did last time was doing this thing when you have correlated data. Today, I want to consider this case. You want to put confidence interval of the difference between two normal populations. All of these things we are doing are only doing for normal populations. Two normal population. And we are right now taking a difference, comparing the means of those two normal populations. But in case when you have independent samples from the two populations. So I gave this example last time. So suppose you are considering the time put into the household chores by men and women. If you take correlated samples, correlated in the sense that, so you have these two populations of men and women, but the person you pick up from one population is correlated with the other. So for example, if they are husband and wife, then this data, if I look at this ninth sample, then this data, the difference over here has a positive significance, positive statistical significance towards women putting in more work in households. Because although this woman is doing much little work compared to other women in this sample, she's still doing more work than her husband. So this difference which is coming in over here, the difference of the means of those two populations will always be, if the populations are normally distributed, the difference will also be normally distributed. But this data which you have over here, this difference itself, how it's normally distributed, the mean of the difference, the difference of the mean will always be normally distributed. But in this case, the difference of each variable has a different significance compared to the individual data points. So for example, if I look at this 9th sample, now the mean over here, I haven't computed. I can compute the mean. So if I compute the mean of all of these, then the mean minutes put in by women is 89.5 and mean minutes put in by men is 65.5. So given this, if I look at this sample, this data point in this sample, the 9th one, this woman is on average, this woman is putting less time than the average time put in by the men in this sample. But still, I know because I have an extra information that she is the wife of this person. Her putting in less time than the average time put in by men in this whole sample does not have the statistical significance towards concluding that women put in less time, because she is still putting in more time than her husband. So what we are interested in is the distribution of the difference. So in the difference, this data point is contributing a positive number 15. So this data, in this correlated data, this entry is still giving a statistical significance towards the conclusion that the women put in more time than men. On the other hand, if this data was not correlated, yeah. Well, no, everything is an anomaly in when you're doing a statistical analysis. So you cannot, if you're doing independent sampling, if you are doing random sampling, you should not put in your bias. You shouldn't say like, oh, well, this number looks like way off, I should throw it out. In principle, whatever you get in your sample, you trust it. So the point is that the point is not that it's an anomaly. The point is that this small number of hours of the minutes put in by this woman, if they were independent samples, so let's think about this case. If these men were picked randomly and these women had no relation to these men, then this woman has no relation to this data entry, or you cannot correlate with any of these data entries. So in that case, she is bringing in a statistical significance towards the conclusion that women put in less time than the men, because the men's average over here was something like 65. So she put in less time than that. We don't know how much her husband puts in, so we cannot conclude anything. But overall, there's a statistical significance coming in because of the uncorrelated data that women put in less time because of this data entry. She is bringing that difference downwards. But that's not the conclusion if this are correlated data. In the correlated data, you do not care about the entries in these two columns. You care about only the differences, because you can compute the difference for each entry and you do all the analysis on the difference. While if the data is not correlated, if it's completely independent sampling between in the two populations, then each column is bringing in its own statistical significance. While in the correlated data, it's only the difference column which matters. So if you look in the difference column, the 9th entry, is giving you a positive number for women putting in more work. While if they were completely unrelated, then this entry is telling you that this woman puts in less work on average than the men. So the statistical significance would be different of this entry if they are independent. So how to deal with them? So we have, so suppose we have these two populations, X and Y, and we pick samples. And yeah, there's a question. Shahrukh, what's your question?
सर मैं ये कह रहा था कि why not treat आखिरी वाली variable है. Hello.
Can't hear you. Yeah. What's your question?
आवाज आ रही है? Hello.
Yeah, अब आ रही.
हाँ सर मैं कह रहा था कि उसको हम outlier treat करके why don't we discard it?
No, you cannot treat it outlier unless you have some very specific reason. Otherwise, you are just putting in your bias. You have concluded beforehand that women put in more work. And if some data entry is going against it, you are just putting in your bias and you say that I'm just not gonna take it into account. That's not, you're not doing real research. You're not going in and trusting your data to answer to reject or accept your hypothesis. You're just doing whatever you wanted to conclude. You're just doing that. Sometimes you do it. Sometimes you do data analysis, you get a result. It just does not correlate with what you see in the real world. Then you go back to your data and then you see maybe there was something wrong in my data. But the nice thing about this statistical analysis is that if by chance you get outliers, that's why we put these confidence intervals. That's why we put in some percentage of how much confident we are about these things. All of those probabilities are taken into account when we do this analysis. That what if by chance we start picking up these outliers? So those probabilities are already taken care into your analysis. And as we have seen, the more data we accumulate, those uncertainties go down. So you cannot treat them as outliers. That would be cheating.
सर लेकिन ये भी रिफ्लेक्ट कर सकता है कि you have अगर कोई एरर आ गया इसका.
It could be, लेकिन you cannot do it a priori. The point is that if you are confident that you have done a random sampling, you should not be throwing away things. Because if you throw away things, then you are putting in your own bias. That's the main thing. You have आपके पास अगर ये entry आई है, this entry existed in the population, that's why it came in. It's not like, unless if it's a false entry, it didn't exist, someone made a mistake in reporting, that's a different matter. But if this entry was present in the population, that's why it has shown up in a sample. And all our analysis, it takes into account these possibilities that by chance you pick up those entries which are very unlikely. They do exist in the population, but they are unlikely to be picked, but they can be picked. And since we are dealing with the probability distributions, all our methods take into account. We are in the end making only probabilistic statements. And those probabilities take into account. So if I have assumed, so remember that this thing, I have assumed something about the population. There is a normal population. So in those normal populations, there are some chances of some entries to be very large or very small compared to the mean, but with a small probability. And all of that is part of your analysis. You cannot throw out these entries by looking at them just because they are different from the other numbers which you see in your sample. But main point was not that. Main point was that this difference, if I look at this entry in the difference column, this has a different significance if this is a correlated number. I could compute this difference because these two are correlated. If they are not correlated, I should not be subtracting this woman's number of minutes with any of these men's number of minutes. That means nothing. All I can do is compute the mean for the men and compute the mean for the women and subtract those. So I will be able to say in my sample, men or women on average in my sample put in more work than the other. But I won't be able to say it about an individual. While if it's a correlated data, then I can make this column of differences. So that has consequences. So like intuitively speaking, the consequence is that this difference over here has a statistical weight towards women doing more work. While if I was not creating this column, which I will not be able to create if these are not correlated, then I won't have this positive number over here. Then this entry will not be telling me that women do more work. Then this will bring in a statistical significance that women do less work. This is lecture, I think, 13. Now, so in case of uncorrelated data, this column, this third column means nothing. You will not be creating it at all. But what you can still do is you have this sample from here and sample from here. And from those samples, you create these means. And sample sizes do not even have to be same. Because all you are interested in is the mean of your sample. And that you can compute no matter what is the sample size, even if the two sample sizes are different. You can always compute that. And then I'm interested in this. I compute this number. This gives you an estimate of the difference of the two means for the population, but it's a point estimate. We want to give a confidence interval. This could be one of these numbers, this could be one of this X bar or Y bar. Since they are both random number, the difference is also a random number. Give or take. More exact about your statement. So if I take this sample, I get a number for population X, a number for population Y, like I got in this table. I got that men put in 65, women put about 90. So I could say that women put in 25 minutes more. But that would be just what you call a point estimate. And since it's a statistical analysis, you just took a small sample. You have the chances that this would not be equal to the true mean of the population. If you had computed these means for the whole population of men and whole population of women, obviously you will get, for that difference, you can get a different number. Most likely you will get a different number. So what you can conclude based on this one sample, that's the idea, that you want to make a more exact statement that what is the estimate difference given a certain probability. Now the idea is that no matter what the sample size is, this we know, that the expectation value, if I compute, both of these are random variable, I can compute the difference and take the expectation value. By the algebra of expectation values, we know from your last course, and we discussed it in the beginning of this course, it just breaks down. And these individual expectation values are just equal to the population mean. for the two population. So that means if I compute this variable, first of all, the idea is each of them is a normal variable. That is normally distributed. Because that's just been our central limit theorem, that if the population is normal, no matter what is the sample size, the sample mean is a normal variable. So X bar is a normal variable, Y bar is a normal variable. And we know that if we take a difference of two normal variables, then this difference is also a normal variable. So it's a difference is a normal variable, and we know that the mean of the difference mean of the sample difference, sample mean difference, that's the exact statement, mean of the sample mean difference is just equal to the population mean difference. That's what we have found over here. So that means this would be a normal variable whose average value would be equal to the difference of the sample of the population means. And I can also find out the variance of this new variable which I have created. Is the variable which I am interested in, the difference of the sample means. It's variance because in the variance, the number which is in front of each variable becomes the square. So -1 becomes +1. And I know that these variances are where sigma x is the variance, sigma x is the standard deviation of the population x, and sigma y is the standard deviation of the population y, and x is the sample size of population of sample from population x, and similarly for ny. So that means I can create this standard normal this, think of it as one single variable. It's average. That's how you compute the standard normal. Subtract the average from it. And over here, you put in the standard deviation. We see that the standard deviation is just this, the square root of this, because standard deviation is the square root of the variance. So this is the standard, this standard normal governs the distribution of the difference of sample means. So it governs the distribution of the sample means. So it tells you that if you get one value, because you're doing just one sampling, its occurrence, what are its probability of this thing occurring, they are all contained in this distribution. But just saying that this is a standard normal. So you can note that this is the distribution of the difference of sample means. So sample sizes can be different, but in the end, what matters is only the mean. And the sample sizes get reflected in how you compute the standard deviation of this standard normal. Now, if by chance you know, which would be very rare in practice, in practical problem, but if you know, just for the sake of argument, if you know the standard deviation of the populations, of the two populations, sigma x, remember that the sigma x is the standard deviation of the population, not of your sample. Similarly, if you know the standard deviation of the population y, then this is just a normal standard normal, and we know that in that case, using our arguments as before, our confidence interval would be given by this. This would be the central value, which you got in your point estimate, and plus and minus, you put in the critical value with any confidence level you want, and it is multiplied with the standard deviation of the standard normal, which in our case is this. So now this tells us that why in our formulas there would be a difference if these men and women data over here is uncorrelated. Because previously we were taking this difference column and computing the standard deviation from here. Now, if they are not correlated, I cannot create this third column. So I will not be computing the standard deviation from this. Rather, I would be computing the standard deviation from these two separate columns, which is kind of shown in these numbers. So this would be the case, and this is the margin of error. This would be case if you knew what is the standard deviation of the population. But what if, like, more often you wouldn't know that what is the standard deviation of the population? In that case, you estimate these numbers from the sample itself. If you do not know the standard deviations of the population, then estimate them from the samples themselves. So when you will estimate them from the sample, then we know that in that case, since the standard deviations themselves become a random variable, so I cannot use the standard normal. Instead, I have to use something which is closely related to standard normal, which is the T distribution. So whatever confidence level you have over here, and again, you multiply it with the standard deviation. The only difference is that instead of sigma x, now you are putting in your sample estimate for sigma x squares. And that's the only difference between correlated and uncorrelated data. If it's uncorrelated, then you compute these sample estimates from the sample from population X, sample estimate of the standard deviation, sample standard deviation of population X, which is Sx, sample standard deviation of the population Y, which is Sy, and make this kind of an average. While if they were correlated, then you have extra information about them. Then you can sort of reduce the standard deviation. That's the whole point of correlated data. Whenever you have correlated data, you have some extra information, and then you can compute the standard deviation using the third column. Now, what would be this number over here? We know that this t distribution has a subscript, which is an integer. So this nu would be approximately equal to it's a kind of a mess. One can derive it not too difficultly, but I'm not going to do it. You just compute this number. You most likely you wouldn't get an integer. You just round it off to nearest integer, and that would be the integer you have to put in your t distribution. However, so you want to use as much statistical information as you have. This is assuming that you do not know anything about the standard deviation of the population. So suppose if for some reason you know that the variance of the population or standard deviation of the population are equal. The means are different, but their standard deviations are equal. Then you have a little bit more information. So you can slightly change this formula using that extra information. So this is the case, no knowledge about standard deviation of two populations. But in case you know that they are equal, then this formula can be made slightly different to cater to include that extra bit of information. And it becomes this. Here, this integer, now it takes a much simpler form. It just corresponds to how much is the total data entry points you have. So since the two populations have same standard deviation, then it's like just having extra data points. So they reflect into this. And you have only one number for the sample distribution, which is just the average, weighted average of the two sample distributions. This is when you know that the two standard deviations are same. Well, even if you use this formula, it will still give you correct result. It's just that you're not making full use of the statistical information which is available to you. Now let's do some example. So suppose you are given this is problem 8.15 from book. That there are you are tracking the salaries of recent graduates of some institution. And your hypothesis is that the socioeconomic level of the family of these graduates, that affects what starting salaries they get. Maybe because they have better connections and they can grab better jobs. So you pick a sample. So you have these graduates from upper class families and from lower class, whatever way you have defined these classes. And you had a sample of 16 persons from upper class, let's call them NU. And you, in your sample, using your sample, you computed, you had a report of their salaries, so you computed the mean of that sample, and this is the number you got. And using the sample, you can also compute the standard sample standard deviation, and that turned out to be 8520. While from the lower classes, from the lower class, you had only 9 people in your sample. You computed their mean, and it turned out to be this. And their sample standard deviation was 7521. So your question is, do people with upper socioeconomic backgrounds make more or not, according to this data? Well, first of all, you make this thing. The point estimate. So this point estimate is telling you that the people from upper backgrounds, they on average get more salaries, and the salary difference is 3,000. But can you trust it? It's just like you picked a few people and it's all statistical. By chance, you could have gotten a wrong number. So let's say we have to make a precise statement. So we want to say at 90%, let's say 95%. Well, let me do 90 because I want to make a point. Confidence level, is it true? So we make confidence intervals of 90%. To do that, I have to use this formula. And this is the margin of error. So the confidence interval would be created around this number with the margin of error. And to compute the margin of error, I have to compute the critical value of this t. But to do that, first I have to compute this nu, which is given in this formula. So I have to compute these numbers because this comes in the formula, SU over NU. This is L. Sorry, this was the general formula, so that was fine. So I have SU square over NL plus SL square over SU square over NU plus SL square over NL. So this number I need it over here and also in the denominator. So I will just compute it. Now, but the issue is that if I take the square of this number, so this is just a technique I'm using for computation. if I take the square of this number and put it in this formula, it will be a very large number. And if you look over here, then I have to take another square. So that will make it an astronomical number. I don't want to write those big numbers. So I'm just going to do a technique. So instead of using this number, 8, because I know that SU is 8520, I want to use 8.52. That will make the numbers smaller and more readable. So that's very easy to do. If I divide, like for example, by 1000 to the 4, then this 1000 can go in over here, because then I have 2 squares, so they can come over here. And I have divided upstairs, so I can also divide downstairs. And I have 4 powers over here, so this will go below over here. And then when I divide 8520 by 1000, I get 8.52. So I can just use 8.52. This is the sample size and U. And this gives me this number, which I had already computed. And then you have to do SU square and U whole square divided by NU minus 1, which is 15. And when you do this computation, you get this number. Similarly, I have to do this. Again, I had 7520. So that becomes 7.52 square over 9. This gives me this number. And then I compute this value as well. And this gives me 4.935. So these two terms I have to add in the denominator. So I just pick this guy and take this guy and add them. So this number plus this number, this is going to give me the number in the denominator. So this gives me 6.307. And in the numerator, I had just these two numbers added and squared. So I am computing square. So this gives me this value for the new. So I have to make it an integer. I can just take it to be 19. And I am putting a 90% confidence interval. So I need this critical value, T19. So beta is 0.9, alpha is 0.1, and alpha by 2 is 0.05. This critical value, and you know that what does this mean? That T bigger than this number is alpha by 2, which is 0.05. So this area, this is the value, critical value. This area is 0.05. So this critical value I can go look over here, chi distribution. Yeah, upper critical values of the t distribution. So it shows me over here that this is exactly the area it's computing. And I need 0.05 and nu is 19. So I just read it off from here. It's 1.729. So the margin of error is 1.729 times I have to compute this number. So what was the number? The number was sx squared over nx plus sy squared over ny square root. These two guys I have already computed. These are these numbers. So it's 4.537 plus 6.283. However, there is a problem. These numbers were when I had divided by the 1000 to the 4. So when I put it back, I get 1000 back over here. So this gives me 5687. So that means at 90% confidence level, at 90% confidence of interval is 3000 plus or minus 5687. So the difference between them could be with 90% chance. Could be anything between -7 -2 687. So based on this sample, you cannot say with 90% surety that the people with upper socioeconomic backgrounds get higher starting offers. Because your statistical analysis is telling you at 90% confidence level, it could be either way. The 0 is included over here. It could even be that the people with lower socioeconomic background get higher starting salaries. So your hypothesis that people from upper socioeconomic backgrounds make more money, starting money, is not bearing out, at least at 90% level. You can try to lower your confidence level. You can say, okay, what if I make a statement with only 80% confidence? So what would that be? So you're saying you may say that with 90% surety is maybe too much surety. I just want to make a statement which has an 80% chance of being true. Anything you go below that, yeah, like if you're saying it's a 50% chance of being true, that literally means nothing. That means it could be true or not. So if you reduce your confidence a little and you say, I want to say something which has a chance of 80% of being true 80%, then how would it change? That would mean that alpha is 0.2 and t of 19.1 is 1.328. So your margin of error in that case would be just, so I have already computed this number, 5687. I had gotten it by multiplying with 1.729. So let me just divide it by 1.729 and multiply it with this new number, 1.328. So it's still, the margin of error is greater than the point estimate. So even at 80% level, you can't say that which one make more money. So although the point estimate gives you certain kind of appearance, but with any statistical uncertainty, you cannot conclude it. Now, let's do another case. This time you are doing population confidence interval for difference of two normal populations for their population proportions. And it's an uncorrelated data. So what would happen in this case? So just like before, we have these two populations, X and Y, and you have a certain yes or no answer, and you want to check which population has a greater proportion of people agreeing or this variable being true in that population. So you're assuming there is some true population proportion in the population X and some true proportion in Y, but you make a sample, you get some sample estimate, which I get like this. I can make an estimate of the difference. That is what I'm interested in. I know that this expectation value will just be equal to the difference of the two sample means. That means this guy, the difference of the sample proportions is going to be a normal variable whose mean is going to be equal to the population mean. And I can construct the exact variable if I also know the variance. So just like before, the variance becomes, when I have a hat, by hat I mean this is a sample proportion. You picked a sample and computed the proportion there. So this is equal to px 1 minus px over nx. These formulas we have used before. And y. So that means for this variable, the standard deviation is this. This is the standard deviation for this random variable. So I can compute a standard normal, and if the sample size is large enough, then I can replace these px's with the sample proportions. All of this is just use of what we have already done. So again, all the conclusions apply. Now, when you will compute the confidence interval, it would just be this sample estimate of the difference of the sample proportions, and plus and minus a margin of error. And since it's a normal, standard normal, so you get it from the critical value of the standard normal, and you have to multiply it with the corresponding standard deviation, which is this one. So every time the logic is same. You have a standard normal, and so you use that. You pick your sample estimate. That's your central value, and around it you compute a margin of error. If you're using the standard normal distribution, you put in the critical value of the standard normal with given probability and multiply it with the standard deviation of the standard normal. If, on the other hand, you're using the t variable, in case you do not know the standard deviation of the standard normal, so you are just slightly changing it with the t variable, where you are estimating the standard deviation from the sample itself. Then you put in the critical value of the t variable here and put in for the standard deviation which you have computed from the sample. But in this case, the standard normal works. For proportions, you always just use the standard normal. You don't need the t variable. So this is the formula which you will be using. So we can do an example for this as well. So suppose there is, I don't know, there is a candidate and you do a survey, and the candidate is kind of interested in knowing if they are more popular among women or men, because they want to then change their campaign pitch accordingly, that where they are doing good and where they are doing worse. So they do a sampling of if they are popular, if the person supports them or not. So it's a yes or no answer. So they pick 100 men randomly and 100 women randomly. They have no relation with each other. And they find that 61% of the men in the sample, they don't know, they want to make a statement about the whole population, because that's the interesting thing. But they find that in the sample, the 61 men out of these 100 support them. So sample proportion is 0.61, and 54 women support them out of these 100 sampled women. So the sample proportion for the women is 0.54. So the difference is 0.61 minus 0.54. So they are more popular among men with a difference of 7 percentage points. 0.07, so 7 percentage point. So the person they have hired, the secretary they have hired to do this analysis, they get this number, and they know that these numbers are not always accurate because it's just statistical. So they say, well, I'm not sure if it's 0.7, it's just going to be something around it. So let me just put in a margin of error around it. And just to be on safe side, let me put a margin of error of 0.03. So it could be 0.1 or it could be 0.04. So the margin of error, they put like this. And they say, okay, we're gonna make our decisions based on this interval, that the difference between men and women supporting them lies somewhere here. So more men support them, support the candidate than women. But does it make any sense? Because they just pulled out this margin of error out of thin air. Who told them that this is the acceptable margin of error? When you're saying the margin of error, the most important thing is you have to say with what probability? What probability? So you can compute it. So they get this data and they find out that we have been making decisions based on this margin of error. And they want to know that what is the probability, what is the confidence level of this margin of error or this interval. So that you can do by using this formula. So this is our formula of the difference, margin of error for the difference of two proportions. So men and women. And the margin of error which was assumed was 0.03. And you just have to put in these sample numbers. Sample size was same. So if you do this number, you get 697, and that gives you the critical value to be which is equal to 0.43. So what is this critical value? It is saying that the probability of Z being more than Z, this critical value, is equal to 0.43 because it's equal to alpha by 2. No, is equal to not 0.43, is equal to alpha by 2. And we are interested in this alpha. So probability of Z being less than Z alpha by 2 is 1 minus alpha by 2. And that is equal to, we have to go to the table. Wait. Yeah. Yeah. Let's go to this table. So you want over here PZ less than Z alpha by 2 you have computed 0.43. And you know that it's by definition, it's 1 minus alpha by 2, because that's the definition. So this is equal to alpha by 2. So then this is equal to this, and this is equal to this. So you just find out what is this. And it tells you 0.43 gives you a number 0.6664. So that's exactly it. This is that when Z is equal to 0.43, then your probability, cumulative probability is 0.6664. Because in this case, you already knew the critical value, you're just computing the probability. So this probability is 0.6664. So that gives you 2 minus alpha is equal to 1.3328, just multiplying this by 2. And that gives you an alpha equal to 0.6672. And that gives you a beta of 0.33. So there's only 33% confidence interval. That confidence interval which was given had only a 33% chance of containing the difference. So it was completely random. It meant nothing much. You had only a 33% chance of the difference lying anywhere over there. So then you go and you tell them, you say that it doesn't mean much. So let's put a 95% confidence interval. So what would that be? Now you are computing 0 to 5. Going back to your formula for margin of error, this is the critical value you use over here. And multiply it with this number you had computed, and that will give you a new margin of error. So this number I already know. And if this I look up, so I need 0.025, but the way it's defined, I have to look for 0.975. We have done it so many times. This is this critical value is so that this is 0.025, but in my table, I'm looking at these numbers. So that number will be 0.975. So I look at, in this table, I just go and start hunting for 0.975. So this, here it is, and this corresponds to 1.96. So this is 1.96 times 0.0697, and that gives me a number 0.13. So with 95% margin of error, the margin of error is bigger than your point estimate. So you have a 95% certainty. With 95% certainty, you cannot say if they are more popular with women or men. So I hope this explains the concept that why it is necessary to put in these confidence intervals. So any question? There's no question. I'm going to stop here.
Okay, sir. Thank you.